Done.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. Today we're going to be switching my car to run on E85 from 93 Octane, and I'm going to show you guys what's involved with regards to making the switch if you're using MHD, and just some of the benefits of going to E85 in general. Should be pretty interesting for you guys. I'd say there's a few prerequisites before you try this, especially if you have a higher mileage car. You want to consider making sure that your fuel pump is healthy. I'm planning to run an E40 mix, and that can strain a stock fuel pump. Some cars can do it, some cars need an upgraded fuel pump to achieve that. Your upper limit could be E85 depending on how old your fuel pump is. I've already actually done my fuel pump on my car, and I have a video on my channel about that. So I've taken care of that. I've put an OEM style pump on the car, and it should be fine for E40. And next prerequisite I would say is make sure you're on index 12 injectors. They're a little pricey, but if you want to make sure that your car runs properly, get the index 12 injectors. It's going to save you a lot of grief in the long run anyway. So I've done that as well. And next up, I would say, considering the added boost that MHD is going to run with E85, you'd want to ensure that you have colder spark plugs, the NGK 95770s gapped to 0.22, just to ensure that your car can handle the additional boost without too much heat soak on the plug itself. So that has been done on my car. So basically, ensure that your fuel pump's healthy. You have to data log to ensure that it's keeping up if you want to run E40. It's a mix of E85. And make sure your spark plugs are good, your coils are good, which I know mine are fine, and your injectors are latest generation. If you've done those things, then you can consider doing what I'm going to be doing in this video, which is converting the car to run on E85, specifically an E40 mix. So we're going to get that loaded into the car, and then we're going to top up with this ethanol I have here. I actually didn't have to do it this way, but I just wanted to kind of get the car running properly on E85 from home. So basically be at home when I load the tune, and then top it up with fuel and see how the car runs. This is just going to be, I have no JB4 or anything like that. This is just going to be a straight MHD flash on E40 banks. Now, it is recommended to run a type of conditioner. This is more if you let your car sit for a long time, but I'm just doing it since this is unknown or uncharted territory for me. So I bought a bottle of this ethanol fuel conditioner with stabilizers, just to prevent varnishing, etc., for cars that weren't meant to run E85 from the factory. Considering how often I drive this car and the fact that it's my daily driver, I could probably get away with not putting that in, but I'm just doing it for now, and I may not use it every tank. It's just a good idea to stop anything nasty happening with your fuel or your fuel lines, etc., when you run a lot of E85. Okay, so here's the compression stroke in a typical 4-stroke engine. You have the piston at bottom dead center here, spark plug igniting. As it's on its way up, some of that fuel has started to ignite. And if you time everything perfectly, you have the piston reaching top dead center, you have the flame reaching its maximum potential and making contact with the top of the piston at the exact point that the piston has stopped moving upward and is ready to move downward. And that's when you got perfect timing. You've maximized the potential of the fuel, and the cycle starts again. If you notice over here, the piston hasn't quite reached top dead center, but this would be an example of detonation. These black X's represent uncontrolled explosions. So assuming you have too much air being forced into the actual combustion chamber over here, and the piston's on its way up, kind of like a diesel, where if you compress air enough, it'll actually heat up. And if you heat it up to the point of igniting fuel, then you're igniting the actual fuel with the heat of the air. and not with the spark plug. So you have the main flame that started over here, and then you have other mini explosions which are interfering with the actual main flame, causing a bunch of turbulence, and they call it detonation or knock or pinging. So literally, here's a mini explosion over here that's creating a downward force right here as the piston's moving up. As that little mini wave propagates and bangs up against the cylinder, up against the piston top, you'll actually hear an audible ping. It's literally the sound of like you're tapping the top of the piston with a hammer. And there's another one going over here. Usually the top of the piston has a low point in the middle and then a couple high points. So from what I've seen, the detonation occurs in the corners. So basically piston's on its way up and you have forces acting against it before it's reached its full potential. That's detonation. So the question is, how can you avoid this? If you have a turbocharged car and you force too much air inside the actual combustion chamber, then you need to have it so that there's less of that compression happening of the air that's in there. How could you do that? You could back off on the timing. So you could have it so that over here, this didn't occur so early. Maybe this should have occurred when it's maybe over here on its way up. That way, there's less natural compression which would happen when you ignite the fuel to act against you moving up and compressing the air, if that makes sense to you guys. So that's where timing comes in. If you have to back off your timing so that this doesn't occur, that means that this initial spark happens when the piston's more further up, so that the peak potential of the flame actually occurs probably when the piston's starting to go down. So as it's actually in its downward stage, just past top dead and it's kind of moving down, that's when this peak potential would occur, so that you're not creating as much compression inside the combustion chamber. And that's why on an older car, kind of like my M3, it's naturally aspirated but relatively high compression with an old school ECU that doesn't have a lot of sophistication or knock sensors and whatnot. So if you're to run NA, lots of compression, that means that there's a lot of air in this area to be compressed. It has a high ratio of compression ratio. As you bring the piston up, you're literally compressing a lot of air. You can have the knock occur regardless of having forced induction. But if on an N54, for instance, you accidentally put 87 octane in, it has more potential, more energy in it, more likely to ignite outside of being sparked if there's enough heat. So you have detonation occur if you put 87 octane in, because it's more likely to ignite at a lower temperature, so therefore you're more likely to have knock. So hopefully that explains to you why you have to run premium fuel in a turbocharged car for the most part, and why when you go to E85 you actually are upping the octane rating, so therefore this is less likely to occur, and therefore it's safer and things run cooler, your engine is happier, and you can make more power before the ECU will step in. Now pre-ignition would be this. Pre-ignition would be the cycle's finished, but you had a hot spark plug that had a high, that wasn't a colder rating. So if that's the case, this would be glowing hot, and you may have pre-ignition due to the spark plug tip actually glowing. That would be pre-ignition. It's different from detonation. And when you run a colder plug, it tends to pull the plug higher into the cylinder head, and it has a better thermal conductivity between the head and the actual spark plug to cool itself off quicker and be less likely to cause pre-ignition. So that's one of the reasons why you'd run a colder plug on a turbocharged car, because first of all, they conduct heat to the head better, but they also are designed to keep the tip of the actual spark a little bit higher up in the head. At least that's as far as I understand it. So hopefully that summarizes things for you. E85 is less volatile, has less potential energy, but it does have a higher octane rating. It's less likely to knock, and therefore you can push more boost into the cylinder and run more advanced to make more power without having pre-ignition. And same story goes for going between 87 and 93. The jump between 93 and E85 is about at least 10 octane points, so it actually feels quite remarkable to people. Alright guys, so I wouldn't recommend that you guys do this at home. I'm just doing it for the sake of science here. We're going to put a tiny drop of regular gas here. This should be 93. It's a little bit older. It's been sitting for a bit, but it will prove a point. Okay, so this is going to be a small puddle of regular 93 octane E10. Let's see how that burns. As you can see, it's making a lot of smoke. And it should leave a bit of a black residue once it burns away. As you can see there, it made a bit of a mess. I'm going to wipe that down now, and then we'll try the E85. So I'm going to wipe that down now. As you can see, you got some soot. I also put some of this stuff in some containers, which I'll show. I'll insert a quick clip so you can see the color differences between the three. Okay, now we'll light the E85. You'll notice that it doesn't burn as intensely, and you're not going to really see, the color's a little different. You're not going to see any smoke coming up from the top of it. It burns in a more controlled manner. And if we give that a wipe now, we shouldn't see too much residue, maybe just a bit. So here I'm bringing the cloth. Basically nothing. So less impurities in your engine, less chance for carbon buildup. Technically better for the environment, but doesn't burn as hot, and you need more of it to do the same amount of work. So you'll visit the pump more often, etc. But at the end of the day, it burns clean, and that's handy with regards to controlling detonation in your engine and overall just a smoother running car, as far as I've read or been told. So now last thing that we're going to try is I have some E0 ethanol 3 92 super premium that you can get in my area. It doesn't have any ethanol in it, and the idea is it's supposed to be quite pure. This is 92 ethanol 3, but it's quite refined. Put a little bit there. Now we'll burn the 92 octane with no ethanol. It's more expensive, but it's supposed to be for motorcycles and stuff that sits for a long time where you don't want varnishing to occur. So that's actually pure 92 octane. It looked cleaner, less black smoke billowing out from the top of it. Let's give it a wipe. So we're getting some yellowing, but definitely not as much as regular fuel. So I've heard the theory that when you run E10, 92 octane or 87 octane, etc., you're saving because they've bumped their octane rating up with the 10% ethanol, but at the same time it's not as refined. It doesn't have to be nearly as clean or refined when you have the ethanol, because your knock index goes up anyway. So you're saving money, sure, so then you know what, it's a little less pure, but you should understand that if you want to do good by your engine, when you get additives put into it such as ethanol, they can kind of lax their refinement process, but you can't get the true 92 octane E0 unless it's quite refined and clean. So something to keep in mind, that there is a difference. Now, next thing I want to address is the actual E85 content, the actual level of ethanol in the fuel if you're to buy E85. Something that concerned me when I was at the pump was, I'll insert a quick clip here with a picture. It says right on the pump there that 51 to 83%. is all they need to guarantee. Some states you can only get maximum E70, etc. So I was concerned that, okay, if I'm going to be tuning my car to run on E85 or an E40 mix, I want to make sure that the actual fuel I'm getting is close to E85, or at least understand where I'm at so I can put the appropriate amount in. So if you look at this face on, you'll see that you can't really tell what's going on, but if you rotate this sideways, you'll see there's a little separation line. You're supposed to put water in up till here, and then you're supposed to put the remainder E85 right up until the neck here, and right to the gasoline. It's supposed to go right to the neck, and then you're supposed to give it a shake. And once you've done that, the water and the ethanol will combine, and it will pull the gasoline out, and the gasoline will float to the top. So here is the fuel up at the top. It's basically right at around E83 if you look really closely. Basically the maximum you can ever really get. So if I shake this up, the process has to start again, but I'll keep it rotated so you can kind of get a sense of what's going on. Eventually that will all separate out, and you'll see what your true E85 content level is. You have to give it some time for that process to occur. But I was happy to see I was basically right at around E83, or the maximum you could ever get. So we're in good shape. The local gas station to me has proper E85, and I can just tune accordingly. I don't have to really think about it being a lower percentage. By the way, I got this on Amazon for about $10. I'll show you guys the part number. Alright, so here's the part number. Got it on Amazon, made by Briggs & Stratton. You can find other ones on there as well, but some of them are more expensive, made by Holley, etc. This gets the same job done. So, and at the end of the day, it's really just a test tube with some markings on it, but they're in a specific spot to make things easy and kind of intuitive. If you really want to, you can just get like a graduated cylinder with markings on it and put a particular percentage in and do your own calculations, and there's software you can download to help you calculate it. But if you kind of want to make it simple on yourself, just grab one of these before you do the switch to E85, so you know that the fuel you're getting in your area is true E85. Next thing I want to show you guys is a piece of software that I downloaded to help me calculate how much E85 to add to my car. It's called E85 Mix Calculator. You can get it on the Play Store for about $1. You can input the vitals here. So the tank size in gallons is 15.9. My desired content is E40. It accounts for the fact that regular 93 octane has E10 in it, or 91 octane, which is 10% ethanol. And basically, if you have an empty tank, you're going to add 9.36 gallons of regular 93 octane, and then you would top it up with 6.5 gallons of E85. And I've inputted the fact that I've tested and I know that in my area I have actual E83, which is as good as it could be. And then you can say the amount of E in the gas, ethanol in the gas, is naturally 10%. So we're in good shape there. This calculates for you based on you having an empty tank and you're going to full. Alright, so now if you wanted to help you figure out how much fuel, so right here we see that if I have an empty tank, if I have an E40 target, there's known to be 10% ethanol in the fuel naturally, and it's E83. It says to add 9.3 gallons of fuel and 6.5 gallons of E85. Now, if you want to top up, let's say you're 3/4 full or you're half full, etc., you can use this to help you figure out how much you need to add. So right now, if we know for a fact that it's half full, basically just put in a value of 8, which is half of 16 gallons. And then if you know that you already have E40 in the tank and you're just trying to top up and maintain that, you use that, and it tells you, okay, then put in 4.6 gallons of regular fuel and 3.2 gallons of E85. That brings you to a full tank, and you're good to go. You don't have to really think about how much to add in there. The car is not going to have a sensor to auto tune and whatnot. We're using MHD flasher, so at the end of the day, we need to do a little bit of calculation on the fly. This will make your life super simple for $1, well worth it. I'm lucky to have a gas station close by to me that has E85. But at the end of the day, you know, if I'm on the road, etc., if I don't want to have to flash back to 93 and I have a map of E85 stations, maybe I can just on the fly figure things out. But definitely handy. Right now we'll just zero that out and assume that if there's 9.3 gallons of fuel in the tank, we need 6.5 gallons of E85. Alright, before I load the E85 tune and top the car up with E85, I'm going to go out and do a data log with the Stage 2 Plus tune on 93 just to get a baseline for what type of power it's making right now, so we can load the CSV file into virtual dyno to get it before and after in similar conditions, similar weather and whatnot. And I'm going to top up the car to have the exact amount of fuel needed to be able to then run E85. So connecting up the tablet, should auto launch MHD for me. We're going to go to the monitor section and do auto logging. So here's something important to note. The low pressure sensor PSI under load. We got to make sure that we're above 50 PSI with E85. So after we actually switch a tune, if I'm going to be running E40, we want to ensure that there's enough pressure there and that my pump is healthy enough to get that done. Alright, so we got our baseline now. I'm going to go top it up with fuel. So I'm at 7.5 notches and I want to end up at 12. So this is my math. And basically, I actually want to end up at 11.78, but there's no way to be that accurate. 11.78 minus 7.5 equals 4.28 divided by 20 total notches equals 0.214 times 15.9 equals 3.4026 gallons. So if I put in 3.4 gallons, it should get me right to exactly 12 notches. I'm going to try right now. You can just make that out, 3.405 gallons. So if my math was correct, then when I start the car, it should be right where we want it to be. I've loaded my CSV file into virtual dyno and about 400 wheel torque and 373 wheel horsepower. It's pretty similar in terms of the best I've gotten in terms of wheel horsepower. Like highest was like 380, but my torque is a little lower there. You know, I'd probably have to do 2-3 runs back to back to really see that number shoot up a little bit. But at the end of the day, it's a little bit warmer than the last time I got my peak numbers. You know, I'm usually in the 420 to 440 range in terms of wheel torque. But I'm just trying to recreate the same scenario here. So we're going to load E85 and see what it does to our numbers here. Now it's time to load the E85 tune. And flash an MHD map, current map. And we're going to want this one right here, 40% of ethanol. Alright, so we're back. I own that license back now. We're going to flash 40% ethanol now. So I don't want to do any custom options or anything like that, just straight right. And since I'm already running one of their tunes, it only takes a couple minutes. And my battery's healthy, so on a 2-minute flash I don't really have to worry about actually connecting it to a battery charger. It's always a good idea, but my battery is really healthy. It's not that very old at all. So you can see the cable flashing away as it's writing to the ECU. And if you ever did on the fly have to switch back to a non ethanol map because you're in a bind, then at least it only takes a couple minutes and you can just basically pull over and bring out your tablet if you had to flash back to a non E85 map. So we'll just let this flash go through, and once it's done, I'll come back. Alright, so it's winding down now. That's what the car looks like when it's in flash mode. Clears all your air codes and everything. Turn ignition off. Alright, so now we're ready to go top up the actual tank with the 85. I'm putting a bit of the treatment in. It says to put, if you're assuming you're running pure E85, to use 3 ounces to treat 15 gallons of E85, but we're only running an E40 mix, so I'll likely just do an ounce and about an ounce and a quarter. That's plenty. Alright, she's all full. Let's give it a first start. I'm kind of excited. As you can see, we're full, so our E40 mix is perfect. There's our low pressure fuel sensor. It's targeting 73 psi, even though the ECU has been calibrated to pump in a good 30% more fuel, even at idle, just to get the stoichiometric air fuel ratio for you. Because maybe not necessarily 30%, maybe 15 or so on this car with an E40 mix, but my stoic number is going to be probably like 11 or 12 to 1 instead of 14.7 to 1. And when you go straight E85, I think it's, I believe it's 9.8 or basically around 10 to 1. But yeah, it's running just like any other day, any other situation. If anything, it kind of feels a bit smoother to me. So it's definitely feeling good and all seems normal. It's even targeting a little bit of a higher PSI here. Not sure why, but at the same time, I guess it's trying to compensate for the extra fuel. So I'm gonna let the car warm up here, and then I'm gonna take it for a spin just to see how she feels, and I'll probably conclude it tomorrow during the daytime so I can give you some impressions. It's definitely idling smoother. There's just no doubt about it. It smells a little different too. It's kind of hard to describe, but kind of like a weed smell or something, I don't know. But definitely running smoother. So let's go for a drive. Hey, some quick impressions here. The car is idling so smooth. Insanely smooth. I can't even feel the engine. It's nuts. I've never felt it idle this smooth. I have cleaned my valves and whatnot, and that made a big difference, but wow, insanely smooth. It's kind of wet out, so I haven't really been able to like feel it down low, punch it in lower gears because it just breaks loose. But it felt good on the highway. I'm gonna go interpret the data, see if, you know, I'm sure we picked up power. I'm just wondering how much it is at this point. But what I'm noticing is the car just drives smooth, extremely effortless and smooth. Car loves it. Alright, so I'm back at the computer now, and I've loaded my CSV file to actually interpret some of this data. We have our low pressure fuel sensor here that did not dip below 57 or so. So my low pressure fuel sensor and my fuel pump are fine, and they're able to keep up with the E85 no problem at an E40 mix, so I don't have to worry about that. Here we have our boost that tapers off to It stays at around, let's just say at 6,500 RPM or 6439, we're at 13 PSI. We'll compare that to before. Here's cylinder 1 timing correction. Not much happening, so we're good there. It's not pulling timing. So my spark plugs and coils are fine, and injectors. And yeah, so we're healthy. I'm good. I'm not dropping anywhere near low 50s. So my stock fuel pump's keeping up, but at the same time I replaced it for maintenance because it was going to go at any time. So I'm fine in this respect, but check this out. This will, I don't know if it's going to blow your mind, but I'm quite shocked. So here we are, 429 wheel horsepower, 484 wheel torque instead of 402, 376. I bet you that could have been up in the 420 range, you know, in a perfect situation. But what I do is I go to the exact same spot every time. I always go to the same spot and use the exact same stretch of road, and it was the exact same weather conditions, you know, 77 degrees ambient. Everything was the same, and it was within an hour actually of when I first did it. But check those numbers out. 50 wheel horsepower, 100% you can feel that. But it was wet out, so I couldn't really like get a really intense impression actually, because it would just break loose. But I'm going to try it tomorrow when it's dry out. But that's just crazy. And I've had a few people comment with regards to the smoothing on this software and what you're supposed to use. From what I've seen, this virtual dyno is pretty good, but it's actually conservative. So leaving it at smoothing 1 gets you closer to real world. But here's where, this is the delta here, 484 to 422, no sorry, 484 to 402, crazy delta, it's nuts. Horsepower, 420 versus, 422 versus, let's see, 350-ish versus 420 something. It's just nuts. Crazy. I guess that's what you expect. Everybody praises E85 at an E40 mix on an N54 car with stock twin turbos. It really loves it. If you have inlets, so my car has downpipes, inlets, dual cone intakes, and this tune, and an eBay intercooler to make it all come together. But it's pretty awesome and feels like the car loves it. It's nice and smooth, and it's a lot safer to run E85. So what we'll quickly check here is I'm going to load my data log from the lower run here just to see target boost and whatnot. Here's the E85 data log, and here is regular 93 octane. So my low pressure fuel sensor was reading slightly higher, I guess you could say. Let's say 6600 RPM, I was at 62 PSI, 6600 RPM here, I'm at 57. So, you know, it's utilizing the pump. It's working harder, you can just see it, you know, probably 10% harder, 15% harder, but I'm still safe. Now, what's telling is my timing correction, cylinder 1, at 4500 RPM, it was actually pulling timing, so maybe the quality of my fuel wasn't very good, or it's just, you know, that's just normal. But 4592 RPM, pulling 3 degrees of timing to compensate for knock, etc. So we're going to take that same RPM point on E85, 0 timing correction on cylinder 1, 17.7 PSI at 4529 RPM. 45, closest we can get is here, 18 PSI. So what I want to see is at 6400 RPM, I'm at 13.2, at 6400 RPM here, or as near as I can get. It looks like the boost hasn't really, I guess peak was 17. Peak over here, 18. So between stage 2, we're not really seeing a big difference in boost pressure. Let's try another RPM, 5400 RPM, 5500 RPM, 16.4, 5500 RPM, 16, yeah, so boost doesn't really change. It's just a timing map, I guess. It's a lot more aggressive to utilize the fuel. That's why you're picking up so much power. So it's actually not really putting the car under too much more strain. It's just maximizing the potential based on the fuel not having a tendency to knock. And it's pretty well manifested by the fact that my green line dips on regular fuel but doesn't on E85. So, you know, I'm impressed and I'm happy. I'm gonna get some clips tomorrow when it's daylight, just driving impressions, and then we'll conclude.
This is the 40 punch. Oh god! Oh my god!
Not bad. Yeah, okay. Well, we're gonna conclude out this video. The car feels quite a bit quicker. In some ways it became less drivable. Like, it's a little intense, but because I have the Alpina Tune and I'm just driving in D, when I'm not more than 20% throttle, it's subdued and just as it was. But when you put it in sport mode and punch it, you can really feel it. It feels like a good, at least 80, 100 extra foot-pounds of torque. It really throws you back. And so far I'm enjoying it. So hopefully you guys enjoyed watching this video, and thanks for watching. Good luck.